No, why don't... You were supposed to just give your opinion on it. You weren't supposed to go into the... Siri, what is the best Kendrick Lamar album? No, it is not.
What'd she say?
She said it was Damn, and it's not Damn. It's To Pimp a Butterfly is his best one.
All right, we're recording, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I wanted a nice cold open where you disagree with Siri over the best album by a certain artist. In fact, let me join you. Hold on.
Siri has dumb opinions on albums.
Here, let me join you. Siri, what is the best Pink Floyd album? Dark Side of the Moon? That's not true. It's Wish You Were Here. As someone who loves Dark Side of the Moon, that is not true at all. And hello, welcome to You'll Like 'Em with Conor and Josh. But joining me is not Josh. Say hi.
Hi, I'm not Josh.
Yeah, this is my.
Some would say I'm better, and others would say I'm far worse.
Well, I will not say which one because Josh.
Because you're supposed to stay a neutral party. You're not supposed to take sides.
I mean, we'll be fucking honest. Josh wouldn't listen to this shit. But thank you for tuning in. I guess I don't know why I'm having such a hard time introducing the show this week. But just want to say I know we've been gone for a while. Josh and I just been really busy with work and other things going on in our lives right now. Josh has gotten himself a little girlfriend, and I've been working 2 jobs. So
that's a funny way of putting he's found someone. He's found some love in his life, and he's like, oh, I just found a little girlfriend.
Yeah. I mean, he may or may not appreciate that comment, but we'll see. So today we're going to be doing a different episode because obviously with Josh not here, it's not going to be Conor and Josh as You'll Like 'Em. So it's just me today with my friend Brooks from Brooks and Zach 100 Years podcast.
Hello, my name is as he said, my name is Brooks Vernon. And like he also just said, I created Brooks and Zach 100 Years podcast, and I host it every week. Conor didn't really leave me much to say in terms of my own intro.
I was about to say, I was like, would you rather I had said, and
no, it's
here
fine.
It's
fine.
Take the rest.
It's fine.
Okay,
I'm already
start over.
I'm already stirring shit up, and I've been a guest on the show for like not even 5 minutes.
3 minutes and 23 seconds to be exact.
Oh man!
But you're doing better than our last guest.
Who was the last guest?
Well, anyway,
am I the first guest of the You'll Like 'Em podcast?
You are the first guest. Of
oh my god!
Of the You'll Like 'Em podcast. Yeah,
I
like that honor.
I like how you brought on for your music podcast as your first guest. You brought on somebody who has like some of the most like fucking I'm not a music guy is what I'm trying to get. I was going to say my opinion is bad because there's a lot of like, you know, I disagree with a lot of music critics on a lot of stuff, but like what I'm just trying to get at is I don't know a lot about music. I'd like to think that I have pretty good tastes, but
right.
You know, like I often find like I disagree with a lot of people who are into music and various music publications who post reviews of certain albums that came out in the year of our Lord 2017.
For example,
a few. Okay, so I was just fucking reading. What was it? It was either like Vulture or Vox or some kind of fucking website that reviews albums, and I was reading a review about the new Portugal the Man album that came out this year, which is an album that I was like super into, and like everyone was just like, oh, it's just a very mediocre middle of the road album. I'm like, I disagree with you strongly.
I fucking love that album.
Oh yeah, there's Liam's just off to the side. He's the sound engineer. If there's anyone here who's a fan of me and my show, you'll know who Liam is. He's also on the show that I do with Josh.
Oh yeah, and for those you didn't know, yeah, the Brooks and Zach 100 Years is Josh's other show. I think we've mentioned about 50 times whenever we do an episode.
Thank you for the publicity.
Yeah, just to reinforce that point, which probably everybody already knew.
And as a counterpoint, on our show, we mentioned that Josh does You'll Like 'Em whenever he remembers to say that he does this show.
Yeah.
But anyway, I know I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of this show. I'm really happy to be on here.
You gave us a good boy review on iTunes.
Yes, I did. Because like I genuinely think it's a very good show.
Thank you.
I'm honored for you to be your first guest.
Thank you, Brooks. And the reason Brooks is on this week is because last weekend, is that correct?
I think it might have been a week from today, actually.
Well, yeah.
Because it came out the Friday of last week, and this is the Friday of this week. Is when we're recording this.
So yeah, we're recording this on. Hopefully, I want to try and get it up the same day, but it's probably not going to happen. But we're just right at the end of September, and a week ago, the Killers released their newest album, Wonderful, Wonderful.
Yes.
And weeks ago, when Brooks and I were talking, and Brooks said, "Hey, when Wonderful, Wonderful comes out, would you mind if I came on the show and talked about gave my thoughts about the album on the show with you and Josh?" And I was like, absolutely. And we planned it. I had to change it because something came up on the original day that we planned to record, and then Josh went to New York on us, and we are recording without him. So
oh, trust me, we've done the past 2 episodes of Brooks and Zach without Josh. We've had to have some Joshless episodes.
Many a few in the past.
Yes. The I think Liam, like, it might get to a point where Liam, who came on like a year after we brought on Josh, might like get to a point where he has more episodes than Josh does. I'm not sure about that. If the math lines up for that. But I have a feeling like someday that'll come to fruition.
Yeah. But Josh is a busy man. He does all his stuff, and he doesn't drive, so it's hard for him to get around to places. So
yeah.
But here we are. We're gonna talk about. I'm gonna mention a couple other albums I listened to in the last couple of days that I want to give my opinion on and recommendations for or against.
I listened to your pilot episode. I listened to a bit of the second one. So my question is, on this show, like, what is the structure of each episode that you have?
Well, now more than back then, we try and do like maybe a little intro where we just talk to each other and like just talk about nothing really.
That's what we're in right now. We're in the thick of it.
Yeah, yes. And then we do our like music recommendations, and then maybe movie recommendations or what we've been watching, listening to, whatever.
All right.
And then usually by that point we're at an hour and a half, and we have like no time left for anything else. So we're like, we're gonna cut it off here.
Okay, so since we're doing something of where like we have like the point of this episode is a sort of pseudo review of the album, do you want to do like intro, album review, and then at the end like maybe the last like 20 or so minutes of the episode, or like 10 to 20 minutes you want to do like all the different recommendations? Because I've been listening to a few different things as well. So
that works.
I have stuff on top of the new Killers album to recommend.
Yeah, that works. And yeah, and if there's any movies or anything you want to recommend as well, we can throw them in right at the end real quick. But the majority of this we'll spend on... I
was going to say, because this is a music podcast.
I mean, it's music and movies.
This ain't no movie podcast.
I mean, well, okay. So we do talk about music and movies, and that was the plan of it, was to talk about like arts and like different music, albums, artists we're listening to. And then different movies, directors, stuff we're getting into or we've watched recently, and just give our opinion on them. And when I went on iTunes, it was like you can choose movies or music, but not both. And I was like, well, our cover picture or whatever.
Go with music. Go with music. There's like a million fucking movie podcast out there. You're gonna get more traction if you go music.
Yeah, so I mean, we're still gonna talk about movies.
Well,
but
yeah.
The main thing is we are a music podcast, especially because that's as far like Josh is definitely interested in it too. I think he's more of a movie guy, but for me, like music is the main thing.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we're here to talk about the Killer's new album. Wonderful, Wonderful came out on the what would that be? 22nd?
It was the 22nd.
Yeah.
I originally thought that it was going to be the 21st, the Thursday instead of the Friday, and I set in my calendar like a few months beforehand that it was going to be the 21st. I was so excited, and I was so crushed to realize that it was the 22nd and not the 21st.
Oh, but at least it was only one day left. You have to wait.
Yeah.
And not like November 22nd or 21st or anything like that.
Yeah.
You're like, it's still another month. Or like they pushed the date back when you were waiting on it. And
when
it was
when you said the November 21st, like I imagine like it still came out like in September, but I just think it comes out in November. So I'm like middle of October. I'm like, wait a minute. Oh shit, it's already out. So
you wait like an entire month later
to realize it's
to
been
get
out.
the album, and then you realize it, and it's just like, But yeah. So that came out well for us last Friday. For whenever you guys listen, it was the 22nd, and we decided we were going to do something on it. I got the album on Wednesday. I listened to it yesterday, and just yesterday. And overall thoughts first, I guess.
Okay. First off, how many times have you listened to the entire album?
Just once.
Just once?
Yeah. I started on my second listen, like, because I listened to the Stephen Wilson album in the morning.
Right.
And I drove to work, and then on my break, I just went in my car and I finished it, and I put on Wonderful, Wonderful, and I listened to that for the rest of my break, and then on the way back, I finished it, and I just started listening to it again.
I have listened to the entire album all the way through about, I think maybe 3 or 4 times now, and I've listened to individual songs on it like a lot more than that, because of the way the way it happened is way back in June, they released the first single off the album, which is The Man. And I remember when that came out, like I just saw that, like the video for that in my YouTube feed, and I'm like, oh my god, the Killers released a new song. And like, does this mean that they're coming out with an album sometime soon? Like they were rumored, like, because they wanted to maybe have an album come out like late 2016, but that never happened. So like people were expecting them to come out with an album this year. So they released The Man. Then they did Run for Cover, Wonderful, Wonderful, and Some Kind of Love. They all released before the album came out, so I listened to those 4 songs like obsessively beforehand. So they released those 4 songs beforehand to promote the album, and I listened to them obsessively in anticipation. Just to give a bit of preface, the reason that Conor brought me on to this show to talk about the Killers album is because I have cited many times that the Killers are my favorite band ever.
Which is funny because Brooks is someone who has often said I'm not really a big music guy, and I'm not really big into ranking favorite things or whatever. But he was like, this is about. Well, you explain.
Well, yeah, it's just sort of like, I'm a movie guy first and foremost, and so with movies, I have all these different favorite directors and films that mean a lot to me and everything, and films that I relate to on a personal level, and that can also go for TV shows and to a lesser extent novels and books and stuff. But with music was always one of those things of where I just if there's like a song or an album that I like, then it's just like something I like. It's just because it just sounds good, and and I never really like it didn't have like say an emotional impact in the way that like say some of my favorite movies did.
Right.
That was until I listened the first time that I listened to an album all the way through, and it like hit me on an emotional level and like spoke to where I was when I listened to it and everything, and had like that stereotypical like like people talk about like how an album like changes their life and everything once they listen to it. Like the only time that that's really happened to me, well, it's happened more than once, but the first time it ever happened was I was in high school, I believe either my junior or my senior year, and and my teacher, Mr. Hooper, he had a record player, and he would bring in vinyls every once in a while, and he brought in a vinyl of Sam's Town, the album by the Killers, and he played a track off of that, and I'm like, this sounds really cool. So I went home and I listened to the entire album, and I was just like, my mind literally like caved in on itself when I listened to that. I'm just like, oh my god. Like that was the first time that I really like viewed albums in that kind of way, and like to this day, Sam's Town is still my favorite album I've ever listened to. It means a lot to me, and then I like got really into the Killers because of that, and so I listened to their first album, Hot Fuss, which is also amazing, and like Day and Age I really love. Their fourth album, Battleborn, not so much. But now Wonderful Wonderful is their fifth album, I believe, fifth full length album that they've released, because they often took kind of long breaks between albums, especially with the last few. So like everyone was like really anticipating like this album, and I was anticipating a lot. It was like the other albums that were coming out this year. Like there was several that I was looking forward to. Like I was looking forward to the new Gorillaz album. Kendrick Lamar was coming out with a new album, and so was Foster the People, and all these different albums I was looking forward to. And I think the theme of it was that like I thought they were all like half good. Like the Gorillaz album, all the singles that they released ahead of time were fantastic, and then the rest of the album was just like really boring. And then like both Damn and Sacred Hearts Club, which was the Kendrick Lamar album and Foster the People album respectively, they were both kind of uneven in terms of the quality, in my opinion, where they had some really great stuff, and I don't think like either album had like anything like bad, but like stuff that was much more middle of the road than I would have expected from either of those artists. So, but like yeah, so I was I hit the table a little.
So good.
I was really looking forward to Wonderful Wonderful, and I was hoping that it was going to break the pattern, and I think for the most part it did. I really love the album. Upon re-listen, it's a bit more uneven than it was on the first listen, I realized, but I still think that it's pretty great and has some really great songs on it. I'm excited to talk about it with you. I guess that's general thoughts. I guess that falls under the general thoughts thing, along with like my background with the Killers.
Yeah. And for me, like I don't really listen to like stuff off of Hot Fuzz when I was in like high school, middle school, stuff like that. And I liked the songs. I remember I liked was the two big ones from Hot Fuss was Somebody Told Me and Mr. Brightside, and I really liked those songs. And they released, I think it was it Day and Age with Humans on it.
Yeah.
And I didn't really care for Humans too much. I was like, this is a little silly. And I liked off of Sam's Town When You Were Young. But like I never really thought about them much after that until you start talking about them, and I was like, all right, I'll listen to them. And there were some songs on Sam's Town that really interest me, so I need to like try and listen to that all the way through. This should be so busy, man. It's but I decided when you were like, listen to the album, I was like, well, I'll just get it because I had I got a $25 gift card from parents at work, and I was like, I'll just use that. It's a free album essentially, so I got that and the Steven Wilson one, and yeah, I've very much enjoyed it. Like, it's got a very new wavy sound, which I'm a fan of 80s music. And I like that it's got those influences in there, and as we were saying earlier, a lot of it is they take these influences and they run with them further than people in the 80s actually did. And it's like that resurgence of this 80s sound, like the whole gated drums and like gated reverb on the drums.
There's
and stuff
a lot.
like that.
There's a lot of that kind of sound in indie music nowadays, because it's sort of, we're in that period of pop culture where like when throughout the past century or so, like whenever you get a certain amount of time past a decade, then you start seeing people get nostalgic for it, and then you start seeing like influences from it and like just things about it in pop culture. And right now we are very much in the era of looking back at the 80s and like being nostalgic for that, because like people thought it was going to be the 90s and everything.
Fuck.
Like the joke of like only like 90s kids remember this and everything. Like, so everyone thought it was going to be the 90s, like in that was going to be the era that we were going to be super nostalgic for. I still think that we will get to a point when that happens, but I think right now with Stranger Things and all the different things influenced by that.
Yeah, like the
and
2017 It was in 80s, right?
Yeah, 80s, and like just like and a lot of different stuff nowadays and like music, and you're definitely feeling this very 80s kind of like throwback type of thing happening right now. And the Killers, I think, have always sort of, like, even before we were in that kind of era, back in 2004 when they first debuted, they've always been very open and very apparent about like their different influences, and all of their influences are almost entirely from the 1980s. And we were talking about this before of like, I do not like a lot of music from the 1980s. I've always seen that kind of era of music as kind of like, I don't want to say soulless, because there's like, I do acknowledge there's a lot of great music that came out of it, but like a lot of it seems very similar, very kind of homogenous, and very like grating on my brain.
Yeah,
like
and I think that's was just pop music in general for like many of the time. Like a lot of stuff we look back on fondly from these times is like the stuff that people feel holds up best. Like we listen to Zeppelin and AC/DC and bands like that from the 70s, but people forget about like the Captain and Tennille and shit like that.
Right,
It was
yeah,
absolutely
like
dreadful from then.
That's an argument that I've always made, and like I've both gone into arguments with people about this, and I've like there've been people who are just like, yes, oh my god, this is what we've been saying for a while. But when it comes to like the thing that annoys me whenever people complain about culture nowadays, like be it movies or like music or TV shows, a little less so, but like anything really that's like popular and is like a big kind of business and is like dependent on like popularity and like mass popularity. Like there's always like a lot of shit and a lot of mediocre stuff, and like it always annoys me a lot whenever people are just like, oh, movies are so bad today or music is so bad today. He's like, well, no, it's not. You need to, there's just a lot of it. You're in the middle of like it right now, and you need to go out and seek the good stuff, because that's what people in the past had to do, because there was also a lot of shit back then and everything. If you like look at like the number one top 100 hits of like going through the years and like the era of like the Beatles and like the 60s and all that. Like, and there's a lot of shit in there that's just not good. And that's because like there's always a lot of stuff, and like the truly great stuff always with time rises to the top.
Yeah, yeah.
Like people are influenced by it. People will reference the good stuff, and eventually it just becomes part of the popular consciousness, and people look back on it as being emblematic of the time period that it's from, when in reality it was like when it came out, like even if it's popular, it's just like another thing that comes out, and there's like a lot of shit out as well. So, but my thing with the 1980s is that it seems to me like the shit that's not very good, and like if you look at a Venn diagram, the Venn diagram of shit from the 80s that was super popular but was not very good, and shit from the 80s that people look fondly back on, that is a circle. It's just a circle. Because to me they always fall into the same category of like, the example that I usually go to is something like that's incredibly arbitrary, and I can't say why I feel like this, but there's a few people in our immediate friend group who fucking love the song Africa by Toto, and I fucking hate that song so goddamn much.
I once argued with a guy about why Rosanna or Hold the Line was a better Toto song than Africa, and they just were adamant, no,
that's because
Africa's best.
That's because it sucks. That's because it's a bad song, and I can't put to words why I feel like that, but every time I hear it, it makes my like it just makes my skin crawl or something. I don't know.
And my favorite thing about that song is, and it goes back to what we were saying about like 80s and new wave and stuff like that. They had this cool sound for a lot of it, but they didn't have the like, I forget what Liam said.
I think he said they didn't have the theory.
The theory behind it. And funny that you bring up Africa, because Africa is a hit by Toto, and Toto were formed in like the late 70s by entirely session musicians who all were very talented musicians, and all like had played with several different bands and artists at the time. They continued to, even when they were in Toto. Jeff Porcaro, the drummer, was a huge session musician, very talented. Steve Lukather, talented guitarist. And they've made fucking shitty music in a band made up of all very talented session musicians. They made some really not very good music.
I think when it comes to art, you need a mix between like skill and craft, and just like a technical knowledge of your medium and how to make it work, along with just like, you know, a kind of creative spark and like a desire for like innovation and everything. And those two things together are what makes great art. Because if you have one or the other, it's like if you have like creative ambition and a desire to innovate and experiment, but you don't have any knowledge of a craft or how to make something good in the medium, then it's just gonna, like, it'll be an interesting experiment. It'll be like something that is nice to view from a distance, but like it's not gonna be like a great piece of art. And then if you have like just craft but no ambition creatively, then you just have like, well, it's nice, but it's not. It's mostly just okay and well made.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to join these two things, and I don't think Africa by Toto is a good example of that because it fucking sucks. And I went to this concert in Philadelphia of this band called Ninja Sex Party. You know that.
Yeah. I love
For
it.
listeners who don't know, it's a comedy band on the internet that I like. And I went there with a group of about 4 other people in our friend group, 2 of which were the ones I refer to as like fucking loving that dumb Toto song. And I went there, and for various reasons, I got super depressed while I was there, and I was just in a very bad mood, and eventually got to a point of when we went there, and Ninja Sex Party have a new cover album coming out, and they were going to play a few songs off of that, and everyone was super excited because they decided to fucking cover Africa by Toto, and like the entire time that they were going through the cover part of the concert, I was just like, please, for the love of God, do not play Africa because I don't need Africa playing when I'm in this mood and I'm surrounded by a bunch of people who are gonna flip their shit over this dumb song. And thankfully they did not. And they did a cover for a song that I actually did like, which was if you're listening to this, listeners, and you're like into music and everything, and I say that I have bad opinions on music, this is going to be your evidence for it, I guess. Is I fucking hate the song Africa, but I love the song You Spin Me Right Round by whatever by whatever the name of the person who did that. They never
Dead or Alive.
Dead or Alive. No one ever fucking listened to the rest of their discography. They only know that one song, and that one song's fucking great. It's
a fun song.
And Ninja Sex Party did a really good cover of that.
Real quick before we go back to the Wonderful.
Yeah, we just kind of went on a whole like tangent there that wasn't even remotely related to the Killers.
Now
or,
you know how it feels to do this show. This is how it happens all the time. We're like, we're gonna talk about this, and then we're like, shit, we're an hour in, and we haven't talked about what we were promised to talk about.
Yeah, because like with 100 Years, we can go on those tangents because it's just a bunch of donkey nonsense that we talk about, and Liam, I see you over there laughing. Don't act like that's not true.
I mean, he's nodding in agreement, and he's agreeing, yeah. But before we talk about Wonderful, real quick, what other covers did they do? I'm just curious because I
Ninja Sex Party?
Yeah, I want another cover album.
They did so they did You Spin Me Right Round, and I really like that cover. They did some songs off of the first cover album. I think the only other one that they did off of the new album was the song "Pour Some Sugar on Me."
Oh, by Def Leppard. Okay.
And that is another song I really don't like.
I used to like it as a kid, and now I've kind of gone off Def Leppard when I'm older.
Yeah.
And I love Danny. I love him dearly. I would love to meet him again. I met him very briefly once. But he either has really good taste in music because he likes like Gentle Giant and prog rock bands like that, and then he likes stuff like Nirvana and Def Leppard, and I'm like, oh, we'd have such interesting conversations about bands that we like and bands that you like that I fucking hate. So
but Danny's like one of those guys who's very chill, so you have to be you have to be careful if you start railing against a band that he's gonna be like, whoa there.
I would never, like, if I ever met with him, I would completely avoid Nirvana altogether because I would just say things and he'd be like, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we've gone off on a long enough tangent, so we're gonna talk actually about the thing we advertised talking about.
Okay, so yeah, basically what the point I was trying to make is that a lot of 80s music is bad and shitty and not good, and I don't like it. But I feel like the Killers, who love a lot of 80s music, I feel like their whole shtick for their entire career has been taking the best parts of the 80s and distilling it into songs that are actually good.
Yeah.
And that you can actually listen to and not get a migraine.
It's funny, though, because a couple of the songs off of the album were very 70s sounding to me. Like, I forget the one, but there's a Springsteen reference he makes in it.
It was Out of My Mind.
Yeah, I like that one, and that had a kind of 70s feel to it at times.
A little bit, but like I think production-wise, it was very much still in the kind of 80s realm. Like this was, I feel like they've gone more and more in that kind of direction because the way it, with Hot Fuzz, they started out being very influenced by like New Order and all that stuff. Like they got their name from
the New Order video.
Yeah, there was a music video that this band called The New Order did, and they featured like a fake band called The Killers, and that's where they got their name from.
It's just New Order. You fucking pleb.
I've never listened to New Order. I'm sorry.
They're all right.
But like they were super influenced by New Order and like the Smiths and like a bunch of stuff.
Another band that's just completely all right. The Smiths.
Really? I love the Smiths.
That's
don't like one of the only 80s things that I like.
I don't like Morrissey. I like a couple Smith songs, but like he's just too big an ass for me to listen to them, unfortunately.
Really? Because I don't know anything about him outside of that.
Well, I'll not tell you anything because then you'll be like, I don't know if I can listen to Smiths anymore.
Yeah. It's gonna be one of those, isn't it?
I'll tell you after the show.
Tell me after the show. We don't want to bring down the mood.
But
yeah, so with Hot Fuzz, they were very influenced by that kind of like section of music from the 80s, and you can definitely tell.
Yeah.
And then with Sam's Town, they moved sort of towards like not like a Dancer in the Dark thing, but like other Springsteen stuff. They moved in that direction. With Sam's Town, they went very Americana for it.
Yeah.
And then Day and Age was the first time that they started really leaning into the kind of stereotypical kind of 80s sound, like a very Duran Duran type of thing. And then with Battleborn, they experimented with being bad. And then with I'm sorry, I'm shitting on the Battleborn album a lot, but it's not very good. I'm gonna be honest, it's not great, and I think they realized that because they took a really long hiatus after Battleborn. Like Battleborn came out and they didn't make any new music for like 5 years until Wonderful Wonderful. But I think
worth the wait.
Yeah, I think with Wonderful Wonderful they had this. I was reading interviews with them, and like, because the thing was they were in the middle of making it. They were spending most of 2016 making it. Like they started like late 2015 and were making most of 2016. And 2016 marked the 10th anniversary for marked the 10th anniversary.
I'm gonna keep that in.
Don't keep that in. That's bad.
But it wasn't like a burp or anything. It was just.
It was like a little burp thing that off to the side, and that's what I cut out of 100 Years. Don't.
That's what it was. Just like.
Don't include that.
Okay, all right.
There was another one. But yeah, 2016 marked the 10th anniversary of Sam's Town, and they had a huge celebration of that. And like the thing about Sam's Town is that I don't. This is gonna sound super pretentious. But like if you're like a real Killers fan, like at least in my experience. If you're super into the Killers, then your favorite album of theirs. Come on, Liam. Okay, so listeners, we're filming in the new official 100 Years Productions studio, which is Liam's office, and on his fucking desktop, he has the rotating wallpaper thing, and there's just a naked woman as one of the wallpapers,
squirting a hose up past her breasts. She looks good.
I mean, she's a very lovely woman, yes. It's just we looked over and did not expect to see that. But anyway, like me being like up my own ass, in my experience, at least for me, if you're super into the Killers, then you sort of realize that if not, like you either Hot Fuzz and Sam's Town are on the same kind of level, or Sam's Town is their best album, which it is. That is a fact. Don't act like it isn't. But people who like only like casually listen to the Killers or like know of them, they always assume that Hot Fuss is their best album because that's the one with Mr. Brightside on it and all these things. Yeah, and like a lot of people say that, but like I think it's very telling that when the 10th anniversary of Hot Fuss went by, like it wasn't really much of a thing. They were just like, oh hey, this is the 10th anniversary of our first album. That's neat. When the 10th anniversary of Sam's Town happened, they performed a special like limited time concert in Vegas. And Sam's Town is a nickname for Las Vegas because that's where they all grew up. But they did this whole special thing and they released like bonus stuff that wasn't included on the album. It was like this whole event, and they were like talking about it online and like posting all these different things. And they had the big concert. It was this huge celebration of the 10th anniversary that just didn't happen with Hot Fuzz. Then that's because Sam's Town, like to the Victims, which is the name of the Killers fans, that's like the one that's like meaningful to them. And like as a huge Killers fan, that's the one that's meaningful to me. And with that whole 10th anniversary celebration came out while they were making Wonderful Wonderful. So they were saying that they kind of looked back at Sam's Town and like the process that they had back in those days and tried to think of like a way wanted to approach this new album in a sort of similar kind of way. And even though like in terms of its sound, it's very different. I think they did like go back to some of those lessons that they learned from Sam's Town when making this, and as a result, it's much better than Battleborn was.
So should we just go through the tracks and say
Yeah,
what our
because
opinions on them
we've given our general thoughts. So I think if we want to get into like specifics with like tracks and everything,
are? So your opinion on Wonderful Wonderful? You said it was one of your favorites. I said it's probably my favorite on the album. I mean, it's
and we're talking about the title track.
yes,
Wonderful,
yes.
Wonderful.
The first track on the album is Wonderful Wonderful, the title track.
I was when they first revealed like the art for the album, which is like a dude. Well, I assume a dude. But there's just like a hand of somebody holding up like
This
a
is 2017. You can't assume genders.
I know you say that as a joke, but I mean that genuinely when I say I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. But there's just a person holding a fucking conch shell of some kind, like a big old conch. And they're in the middle of the desert. I'm like, oh, I wonder what this is supposed to mean. Because all the other fucking album covers that they did were pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I'm like, I wonder what this means. And then the title track, Wonderful, Wonderful, just opened.
Thank you, Monfrey.
Thank you, Liam.
But it's a real good song. I enjoy it a lot, and strangely enough, there's parts of it remind me. I don't know if you've ever heard the song. I know Liam has. Who is she, Liam?
That is the British model Rosie Jones.
Rosie Jones, everybody.
One of my many wallpapers.
Rosie Jones. Look her up. She's a lovely lady.
We had a little segment, a little bit on the podcast talking about your wallpaper, because it came on and we did not expect it to come on so hard and fast, and it took us by surprise. So we had no choice but to talk about it.
Like 60 pictures, and it's all just things I like, including women.
That's okay.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But the song, it reminds me of at times, not the whole thing. Like there's like the bass driven like verses with like the vocals, well, and the drums too, but reminds me of the song and Liam could completely disagree on this, and I'll let you know what he says. Rock On by David Essex, because it's just the bass and then the vocals, and it's even got the parts in it where it has like the synth effect. It sounds like the violin. It's like and that's something that's on Rock On too, right after like the one of the verses. It's like a slide on the strings, like and it's got that kind of dissonance that works well with the song.
Yeah.
And that's what made me like when I heard, because the first time I heard it was in your car, and I was like, I'm actually really digging this. So I went ahead and I heard that song, and it's not saying that like the rest of the tracks are bad. It's just that was the first one I heard and I really liked it, and then I listened to it like in the car for real, and I was like, no, I really like this song. This song's really good. And it's like the darkest, I think, and probably like I know I said that The Calling is different from everything else on the album, but I think Wonderful Wonderful is very different as well, but it also, not in a bad way, it's very like this kind of dark, luscious sound to it, but it also really works for the intro and everything like that.
Yeah, and it was something that I was really not expecting, because like I said, the first track that they released from the album was fucking The Man, which is like night and day different from like the opening track. And I expected for the most part a lot of the album to be sort of like The Man, and there's certainly a lot of songs that are like The Man, but when Wonderful Wonderful dropped, it was very different tonally and like just structurally from that, and I was very surprised, and I was hopeful because I was hoping it meant that there would be a bit of variety on the album. And I think there was some like them stepping out of their comfort zones, because like Wonderful Wonderful sounds like nothing like any of the other songs that they've ever done, not only on this album but on any of their previous ones. And I really appreciate them going for this very different thing. I think it really paid off, because it is one of my favorite tracks on the whole thing, and I just like the whole feel of it. And normally, I'm not a guy who likes the more lush sounding, like longer songs and everything, but I just love like the build and release of this opening track, of like you get that build up of that bass, like really bass driven kind of verses, and then the choruses are like this really epic, like they bring in everything else, and it just sounds great, and I loved it. And it was also one of the few like sort of narrative lyrical songs on it, because the Killers do that sometimes. Like every album has a few like narrative songs. Like their most famous song ever, "Mr. Brightside." I would include that in terms of like when I say narrative song, there's like a song that is like more like a poem, and it can be about a lot of different things. And then you have songs that are narrative songs that are sort of telling like a loose kind of story, and everything. And the Killers, I think they're very good at both kinds of like writing when it comes to that. And to me, on this album, the narrative songs were really it was wonderful, wonderful. And then I'm pretty sure Tyson versus Douglas and The Calling were like the ones that leaned more in terms of like narrative, and like that was the reason I really liked The Calling, because I think that it had a really strong narrative to it.
So yeah, we both like Wonderful, Wonderful. It's a strong opening track, and it's a good it's one of the better tracks on the album. And then the next one on the album is the first single, "The Man."
It's The Man. And I love this song. I think it's fucking great. But my whole thing with The Man is that it's very much, it's sort of like putting Wonderful, Wonderful and like as the first track, and then immediately going into The Man afterwards. I think it was supposed to be like establishing like how different the songs can be on the album, because The Man to me is it's almost like a parody song, kind of, because with the whole production of it and like the lyrics and everything, it's very over the top, and like knowingly so, because the whole point of it is it's making fun of Brandon Flowers' persona when the Killers first started out. Did you know about that? But yeah,
I wasn't aware of I remember you said something about like a parody of his persona.
Well, the thing is, like when the Killers first started out, Brandon Flowers, who in real life is a very kind of shy Mormon guy, who's like from all accounts very, very nice in person. When they started out, they were very much under the kind of thought process of like a rock band. Is like larger than life and everything. So Brandon Flowers kind of put on a bit of a persona. Like I wouldn't say it was a full on persona, but he sort of like played the role of like the leading man, like of the band, and like he would be super boastful and like call like all these other bands like say they were shit, and like the Killers were like the greatest ever. And like that was because like he was in his early 20s when they started with the Killers, when they released Hot Fuzz, and like he was like 25 when Samstown came out. So now that he's
if that doesn't make you feel like shitty about where you are in life, then I don't know what will.
No, that I can't help but think about that a lot with a lot of people I like. But now they've all mellowed out a lot. Like Brandon Flowers is in his 30s, and a lot of the other band members are like in their 40s and such. And like with the meld out, they can sort of they've sort of realized how like ridiculous that earlier stuff was. If you see Brandon Flowers, he's like a lot more mellow and everything, and a lot more sort of like self-critical. Like I think like in a recent interview, he was just like, I think I write a lot of 6s and 7s, to be honest. I'm like, I don't agree with you, Brandon, but you do you. And but yeah, so The Man, for everything about it, from like the way that he sings it to the production to like including sound effects of like a cash register and like the cha-ching thing and everything, like all of it screams like it's like it's a parody of like the kind of pump up songs and the kind of persona of like the guy who like is so full of himself, But what I love about The Killers is not only is it that, but it also really works as a pump up song. Like
Yeah.
if you did it unironically, like you listen to it and you're just like you're ready to like just fucking like go and everything. And
Yeah.
I really love that because they're able to like bring this kind of confidence to a lot of their music, and like this is like the perfect kind of like showcase of that. And probably the only reason it's not like I don't rank it like as high as Wonderful Wonderful or The Calling or Out of My Mind is like uh I don't know, maybe it's like just because I've heard it so many times, because I literally listened to it a million times in the months leading up to the release and everything, so maybe I just got used to it a bit more. But I still think it's like a great song. It's also a really funny song.
Yeah, and I like it because like I even from like listening to it after I kind of didn't remember the whole thing where you were like, yeah, this is kind of like a parody song of his persona when he was younger. I was like, oh yeah, this is not serious at all, and I like that it's a very funky song. It's like that kind of like 80s funk that you know, a lot of people are trying to replicate, like Bruno Mars and people like that are trying to bring that like Cool in the Gang like funky sound. It's a good, like, it's not one of my favorites. Like it's very one I enjoy and I would listen to a couple times. My favorite line probably off the whole album is on that where he says USDA certified.
I was gonna say that because he does it, and his delivery of that line is just fucking great.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just like he's talking about how great he is, and then he's just like USDA certified lean. And
Love that
It's
bit.
fucking great.
Like I heard that, I was listening to it like on my second run yesterday, and that part came on. I was like, USDA cert, however it goes,
certified
lean, and I was like singing it along. I was
like you can't
it's so good.
You can't like hear that and not think that the song is like just it's kind of making fun of itself.
Yeah,
and
no,
everything.
it's a good song. I mean, like I said, I like the funkiness of it, and the fact that it doesn't take itself seriously, and it yeah, it's I don't know if that's putting it back to back with Wonderful Wonderful necessarily works in my own opinion.
I think it's a bit of a. I think it does kind of provide a bit of tonal whiplash, because Wonderful Wonderful is a very serious song, and then you have something like over the top and silly like The Man. But still, I don't think it was like really works against its favor. I think it's like it definitely showed that the album was capable of like jumping between these tones. Maybe not like as graceful as it could, but still like showing that it's able to do that.
Right.
And then it's do you have any other thoughts about The Man, or are we gonna move on?
No, I just would like to make a remark. And it kind of goes back to like the whole thing where he was doing an English accent on the first album, and I could be completely wrong in this, and you could be like, actually no, he actually hates that artist, but like I definitely listen to him and I'm like, there's some Bowie influences in there.
I'd say well, not. I think they've probably talked about Bowie before, and I don't think that like it's one of the ones that like come up like as one of the main influences, but they've no doubt been influenced by him and like have probably talked about him before. I just can't think of any excuse me. I can't think of any specific examples. I'm burping a lot
good
during this because I had a lot of Chinese food before we recorded.
But I mean, I think not necessarily in his writing style, because David Bowie's got a very different writing style than Brandon Flowers. But like the vocal delivery,
you're right, right, yeah.
Not because Bowie was never one to be like, yeah, that was always Freddie whenever they teamed up. But Brandon is very like minimalist in his style. He's not trying to like show off that he is the greatest singer of all time, and it's like that kind of like he does the falsetto every so often, but like a lot of times it's very like lower, which is what Bowie was always very kind of lower, and he had like the higher stuff that was a little more nasally. But and like I was listening to some of it, and I was like, I hear some Bowie. And I think sometimes I just listen to bands and I go, oh, this person sounds like this other person on here, and then I look up and I can find nothing about the other artist I compare them to. About it. And I just listened to Lord's new album, and there was a part on it where she sounded fucking exactly like a singer called Kate Bush from the 70s and 80s. And I've not found much about her being influenced because she's from New Zealand, and I don't know how big Kate Bush, an English artist that I'm sure neither of you guys have really heard much of, don't know how popular she was there. But no, I like the man. So if you want to, or if you want to talk about the Bowie thing a bit more, I don't know.
I was just gonna say that I've always had this thing of where I find myself being drawn to singers and artists who don't have what would be considered like traditionally like good singing voices, like a Freddie Mercury or like an Adele or whatever, like, but rather like, because I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan, and I like with him, and I would include Brandon Flowers, a little like not maybe to the extreme of Dylan, but
I mean,
I would
Brandon
include
Flowers
him on
has
that.
a nicer voice than Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan wasn't trying to be like a pretty voice or anything.
But like, you know, it comes down to like say them, or like the Mark Foster, who's the lead singer of Foster the People, I would include with that, or the lead singers of Modest Mouse or Dire Straits. Like with all of them, I feel like when singers don't have what is considered like the traditionally good voices, they learn how to use their voices better, and like I actually consider them like the better singers and such, because they're able to properly convey all of the necessary like kind of emotions like needed in whatever song that they're singing. And like that's why I consider Bob Dylan one of the greatest singers of American popular music, because he was so good at delivering the songs and delivering the emotions of the songs.
Yeah, I mean, two of my favorite singers, Peter Gabriel and Fish from Marillion, very theatrical singers, like
right.
And a lot of it was they would dress up on stage, and they would kind of go like a little like hammy when singing and stuff like that, try to do like different voices and stuff like that, like as if they were different characters in a show or like a whatever. And neither of them are like you were saying with the others are technically good singers. Like they were a lot of times like sang out of key.
Right, yeah, like
pitchy.
they're not like, you know, you wouldn't group them in with like opera singers or something like that.
But they're like, I think Peter Gabriel's probably one of my favorite singers of all time. And if someone like came up and was like, hey, he's not a very good singer, I'm like, well, he's not trying to be. He's not trying to be like the Freddie Mercurys or whoever in this world where they're like trying to like hit every note perfect on key. He's singing to match the mood of the song and whatever. And yeah. Anyway, let's keep going. Okay.
Do you want to make this like a two-parter and we record the second part just another time?
If you want, yeah, we can cut this off here, and then I can upload this, and it will be like you'll get the rest of our thoughts on the album next time.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. Like I'll come in again like sometime maybe next week and like we just get together and just round out like our talks about the track list, because I think we had a lot of good stuff here, not only talking about like the Killers but also my rant about 80s music and how much Africa by Toto fucking sucks.
It's hard. It's hard to like do it like straight, be like, this is all we're gonna talk about, because then you bring up something, the other person goes, oh yeah, I understand that, and you like go back and forth, you know.
Right. It's like a conversation. It's very conversational, and it is hard to stay on topic with that kind of stuff. But I feel like with like as time goes by, like you'll get better at that.
Yeah.
And like when you have like future guests on, you'll like probably like when you get to like around episode 100. Or get close to episode 100, you'll start finding your footing. I mean, that's what happened to us with 100 years. It took us that long to fucking figure shit out. We didn't figure out what we wanted to do with the show until we reached like the mid 70s the.
Liam says yeah, and he coughed.
So if
and
you
just died. Oh my God, Liam.
If you want to make this a two-parter and we just do like a quick little sign off or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll do that. We'll just cut off right here because we're running out of time. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back with another episode where we kind of conclude our thoughts on this album and talk about some other stuff as well.
And I will finish talking about the different tracks, and then I can bring more various Killers trivia to talk about if you so care for that. And if you enjoy my voice, and if you enjoy my sort of way of talking, I do a lot of it on my own show, Brooks and Zach 100 Years podcast, which is the current flagship show of this little podcast network that we have going on here that You'll Like 'Em is a part of. And that is a show that is hosted by me and my friend Zach, and Liam and Josh, who is the regular co-host of this show, is on that. And that is mostly a comedy podcast where it's very like us talking about various things, like going from topic to topic and just like making goofs and telling jokes and such like that. It doesn't really have a theme or a purpose or any kind of point to it. So if you wanna hear more of me, that's where you go to do that. That was the worst way to say that. Anyway, but yeah, that's my that's my little piece of the sign off to do. So if you have a regular thing that you do on the show, you can do that.
We just say, you can check us out on SoundCloud at Conor and Josh's You'll Like 'Em podcast. You can check us out on Twitter at You'll Like 'Em pod, all one word, no punctuation or anything. Check us out on Facebook at Conor and Josh's You'll Like 'Em. And I don't remember Josh's stuff, so I will put them in the description.
There will be a link to Brooks and Zach 100 Years podcast in the description of this episode. If there isn't, then blame Conor. He betrayed me.
No, I'll do that. Don't you worry, baby boy.
Thank you.
So thanks for listening. Thanks for Brooks for coming on the show. Thank you to Liam for helping with recording and making this not sound like ass, as it usually does. And for his computer with Bronson and naked ladies on the background.
That's a broad brush stroke.
That's
a pretty wide spectrum there.
Yeah.
There's other pictures besides Bronson.
Yeah, I saw Bronson was on right now, and the most memorable with his naked lady in the pool.
Yeah, but let's wrap this up. It is starting to get pretty late.
Yeah. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll be back next time with some more discussion about I said Samstown, wonderful, and music with.
I mean, if you want to do like an episode about Samstown, I'll be down with that as well. I recorded a solo hour-long fucking analysis of that fucking album, like to the point of where I love it, but I also maybe kind of hate it because I listened to it so many times, like within a span of like a few days.
Yeah, but anyway, so thanks again for listening, and tune in next time where we will continue this. All right, bye, guys.
Bye.